What's your name?
Babsy Nkozi Tiwo.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Mr. Nkozi?
I'm a father. Moved to Roosevelt Island about a year ago. I work in investments and also media development and some entertainment stuff.
That sounds pretty cool.
It is. It's work.
How do you like it?
I enjoy it for the most part. You know, it's a little harder working for yourself. You have to like hunt your dinner, but you know, it's what I love to do for the most part.
Does any of your work spill over into your relationships on Roosevelt Island?
Not really. Not really. Kind of been on the island. No pun intended.
Great. So your relationship to the island is that you just live here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. And I mean, from what you've seen so far on the island, can you describe any experiences you've had with racism or prejudice or social injustice on the island?
I've only been here for a year, so I don't have any. Like, I don't have a real, like, overtly racist experience. But there's a lot of subtle racism that happens. My son's mixed. Could be little things that I notice, like people who avoid us at the park, or people who, you know, seem intimidated by, you know, my presence, like getting on an elevator, or, you know, sitting next to them on the bus or something. You know, sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes racism. It's hard for me to say, but yeah, you definitely see some type of bias or prejudice. Yeah.
And you say sometimes it can be curiosity, but do you think racism can ever manifest itself in curiosity?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, racism is systemic, so curiosity, I guess, is like on the lighter side of the spectrum. Right?
Yeah,
I say
definitely.
I give the I open up the possibility of it being curiosity, because who am I to say that they're just definitely racist? You know, even though being a minority makes you kind of like an expert by default on racism. But some people have a healthy curiosity. Sometimes I may be in a bad mood and may perceive things the wrong way, but you know, for the most part, it's very easy to tell what, you know, what something even subtle racism looks like.
Interesting. And you mentioned sometimes people feeling intimidated by your presence or by you. How do you see that playing out? So you mentioned the elevator. What are some other ways?
Yeah, there's several ways. It's so much. It's so much is like natural. And it's hard to come up with good examples. But you know, I'm the infamous young black male. So you know, people have this look like, what is he? What is he doing? Why is he here? Why is he this close to me? He's in my personal space, or he looks like the type who, you know. It's, you know, I've seen it all. You know. And then I open my mouth and people feel differently. Oh, he has half a brain. He's got some class. He's got some etiquette. You know, it comes in many different forms and situations. You know, you just learn to, you know, either live with it, deal with it, you know, or confront it. You know.
Right. You know, this is something I think about often, but, you know, you said, you know, we can learn to live with it or confront it and all that. But lately I've been thinking about ways in which we can kind of, I guess, flip it, right? So flip it to our benefit. Have you ever thought about ways that marginalized people can, I guess, like flip the negative biases they have against them to benefit them in any way?
Most definitely. I do it all the time. I do it all the time. Being a minority, you experience it. You've experienced it from such an early age, you know, and you've lived with it. For me, I went to a bunch of private schools. I lived overseas, where I was a minority in many different situations, in a different demographic, in different situations. But I know myself. I know this. I know what it's like to be me, and I know what people's expectations are. And when their expectations are low, it's really not hard to hop over the hurdle, especially when I know what their criteria are. You know, like I could be on the train and just getting settled. And someone's kind of looking at me like, you know, who's this young kid, you know, whatever. And I whip out my New York Times, and they're like, oh, he reads. Like, it's like they're so surprised, you know. or you hold a decent conversation with someone at a restaurant or a bar, and they're like, wow, I didn't expect that. Like, why not?
Right.
But I guess that's their experience, is their bias, not mine. But it's easy to flip it because you can see how people receive you, preemptively, I guess. And then as soon as you engage, it's easy to play hopscotch with that, not step on the lines. And then all of a sudden they have a different perspective. If that's a lasting impression, I don't know. But for me, it's worked to my benefit.
Hey, yeah, come to think of it, I'm not sure if this is really a business concept or a psychological concept, but it's like when people have low expectations and then they exceed those, and then right, those expectations are exceeded. It's like, I mean, the contrast bias makes it seem like, oh, you're so much better.
Oh my God, he's the best now. It's like, oh, look at this guy. You see him? You see his hair? And he speaks so well.
Like, but that's tricky too, right? Yeah, but that's tricky as well because it's like, man, it's like some black people are acceptable while others aren't.
Well, you know what? I think that the more people you talk to, the better, right? Because the more you talk to people, different groups of people, you find out that people have more in common than they have, their differences. People, like, I get a lot of comments for like being like the unicorn, like a black dad, always with my kid. I love spending time with him above anyone else. And people are like, you're such a great dad. I'm like, well, why? Because I love my son. Like, we all love our kids for the most part. But I don't think that that's a line that's drawn by race, or gender or age, But the stereotype of being an absentee black father is so prevalent that me just simply playing with my kid seems like some type of anomaly. The fact that I use the word anomaly is some type of anomaly to them. So it's easy to hop those hurdles and use people bias against them. I think the real question is, does flipping those situations like have a lasting impression on people? Or am I the unicorn? And I think that in a lot of those situations, I become the unicorn, rather than a lasting impression of, not all people are bad.
Right. Interesting. So you mentioned that you lived abroad.
Yeah.
What are your experiences with race and prejudice and I guess maybe anti-blackness abroad? That's something interesting.
Well, for me, it's a different question. That's a more complicated question. My parents worked for the United Nations. My dad was setting up the first free and fair elections in Namibia in 1990 and 91. And you had like the Afrikaners, the Dutch DTA party, and then like swap all the African people. And we were going to a private school, my brother and I, and we were targeted for being black and being American and trying to like upset the status quo, I guess, our parents, and we were not liked. And I saw racism like a different type of racism, like the equivalent of like 1950s racism in America in Africa, and the push and pull and being like in this weird place in the middle, even as a child, was really, really different. It's a different brand of racism. I've seen racism in Europe. My mom was living in Italy for a little while, and casual, but it's overt, and not in. I mean, it's racism is not okay in any way, but you knew there were any hidden feelings. It's like it's very clear these people are racist. These people do not like you. They do not like your kind. And it wasn't just black people, but different people. I'm not saying that about all Italians, but I'm just saying that in my time in Europe. But that was that was an experience, especially more so for the women. Like there was a stigma that you had a lot of immigrants coming from Africa, and they believed a lot of black women were prostitutes. So a professional black woman walking down the street would still get catcalled like as if she was a prostitute, and it's upsetting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was told the same thing right before I went to Barcelona
Yeah.
to visit my friend, and like a fellow black friend said, you know, you might want to be careful because you're probably gonna think you're a prostitute. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got catcalled, but I did get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Like, I think people saw me as like, oh, this is like a weird exotic thing, blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah.
It's surprising in this day and age, right? How much we're so connected through social media, the internet, etc. But people still have no idea, like that, that there are just various peoples at all different levels and all different ethnicities.
Right.
And, yeah, it's
Very
it's
true.
crazy.
It's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's. The thing is, you move through life, different things matter to you, so you see different things, right? So, young black teenager in America, like, there are all these things that they feel like there's the feeling of like not being welcomed into a world that's basically all around you. You know, as a middle-aged black man, you start thinking like, there are all these opportunities that I still don't have access to, you know? And then, there are people who are blissfully ignorant, God bless them. But there's still this thing that we're taught, like, I guess it's all based off of, I think it comes down to competition, right? Like, people want to blame someone for their own shortcomings, so if they lose on something, it's someone else's fault.
There's a
outside
scapegoat.
their own, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's hard to explain, and it's different amongst different cultures and regions and age groups, but it's very much alive.
Right. So you talked about different brands of racism.
Yeah.
What type of brand of racism do you think exists here on Roosevelt Island?
Okay, I gotta be careful with this one. Because they're gray people, and then they're closet people everywhere, So I haven't been the victim of overt racism, and that's not to say that it doesn't happen here, right? I'm sure there are more than a handful of cases where you have overt racist actions happen here. But on the subtle, on the more subtle side of things, just as forget about me personally, but just as an observer, I can see how the island is kind of just disjointed, right? So you can see the different groups, and it's not. Let me put this the right way. It feels like it doesn't feel as like a cohesive, like this is a neighborhood. It feels like it's sectioned off, not clearly segregated, but somewhat socially segregated, of where these different groups don't truly interact. They're just kind of like living on parallel planes in the same space. It's not. And I think that every once in a while you have some collisions where you'll see things, and I think it's always on the outs. You'll hear people having discussions about something that happened prior, right? And the way they discuss it, sometimes upsetting to me, sometimes offending, and I don't know. I think that's kind of the nature of people, right? To equivocate, scapegoat, but and all that. Just I think it's done because they want to deny the truth that they are prejudiced or racist a little bit, not racist but prejudiced, right? It might be racial prejudice or bias, or some gender or religious, but people do carry these biases, and I feel like people are uncomfortable confronting that within themselves. So. Unless they get in a space where someone they feel like is like-minded, then they vent to you, and then you hear what they truly feel, And that might be after the situation happened at the supermarket, the train station, in a restaurant, etc. But yeah, Rose Island is not immune to to racism,
Right.
bias, or prejudice.
Okay, so where do you locate hope in the process of identifying social injustice here on Roosevelt Island? Like, where does the hope come from?
I guess interaction and confrontation. We were talking earlier. You can't. I don't believe you can address a problem if you don't believe that you have a problem. So I think that it's not like any. I don't think that you can have like a summit or a forum or something like that, and like people are now going to change. There's no, like a handbook or something. But I think you just have to learn that you are more normal than you think, that you're not as special as you are, and I think that's where you start to find common ground. I don't feel like it's pulling someone up. I think it's bringing yourself down. Humility, I think, is the one characteristic that's lacking among and cross-cutting and throughout all these conversations about race, right? Like if you look down on someone, you feel superior, right? Humility is understanding that, someone else's child feels just the way your child feels. And you feel the way you feel about your child, someone else does the same too. It's a very complicated issue. Like, we could go into like schools, why, certain schools are better than others, or we could talk about like redlining, or we could talk about like affirmative action, or lots of other issues that give people who, didn't necessarily ask for an advantage, we gave them an advantage. And now it's had a disparity, and now people look at people differently, like, what's wrong with these people? But I think that, people need to just like interaction more, increased interaction. I think going out of your way to say hi to someone you don't talk to on a normal basis is good. Partaking in events and things that you normally wouldn't, it's great. It gives you exposure, and it gives you better context so that you don't have to receive your information from some third party on TV. That's I think.
I really like that response. Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry for rambling.
So no, that was really great. Exposure, interaction, all those can definitely help. But you didn't really expound too much on confrontation.
Confrontation. All right.
So how can that help with?
Sometimes you biting your tongue is it's a detriment. Sometimes I think that you have to when you confront something, either two things can happen, right? You can find out that you're right, and you can end the situation. You can find out that you're wrong. You could find out that you just simply disagree with someone, right? Sometimes you need to have that confrontation, because when you don't confront something, you have this accumulation of frustration, resentment, and it just boils and boils and boils. And then you have a formulated opinion over something you've never been bold enough to confront later on, right? And then you teach it to your kids, and you tell your friends, and it starts to permeate a whole group of people. Boy, you know what? I know this guy there, and they say this happened like a year ago. Well, did you ever say anything? No. Maybe it's just a simple misunderstanding, which does happen a lot, And I think even being a minority, like misunderstandings, misfortune, I have to separate that from racist actions, because both can happen, And I can't call every situation a racist situation, but I can confront situations to find out what it is, right? Rather than tagging, everything with painting everything with one color,
Right. Interesting. So I'm a PhD student in information science here at Cornell Tech, and eventually I'll go back to the campus in Ithaca. And so one of the questions that I've asked myself is, how can we develop technologies that address issues of racism, inequality, and I guess the question within the question for myself was, how can certain groups of people get better access to resources so they can be able to improve their own lives? And this is something that I'll have to ask people in order to even begin thinking about how technologies or tools like this can be developed?
Well, I'm a finance economics guy, so I would start saying, I'll start with business, right? You know, business will always address a need, right? And I think that minorities need to sort of have a boycott or a blackout, if you will, right? And start spending their money on, we need to start spending our money on things that reflect the things we want, right? Sometimes they aren't high quality products. In the past, it's been true, right? Comparatively, right? So it makes more sense and it's easier to assimilate into other products and things like that. But right now, let's say like with natural hair and like that, you can see a huge Afrocentric movement that's been on the rise, and you see things being tailored, like Black Panther, right? Mm-hmm. There will surely be a follow up. Black Panther, Get Out, you've had Colin Kaepernick, countless others, right? That are making waves and creating and showing businesses that there is a demand for this information, for products, for the culture, and that I think that has to be it just has to be nurtured, and then it'll be sustained, and then it can be something, right? So I think that getting those tools to minorities will depend on us if we're asking ourselves and separating, right? Not segregating, and not. I don't know.
No, it's complete. I mean, these conversations are not new about segregation.
Yeah,
about
exactly.
the benefits of them. I mean, it's completely fine.
Like, you need James Baldwin's already done everything. Like, said everything you can say.
He's not alive.
I know, but his words are. But yeah. Yeah, it's sad that there's still this it's just stagnant still, that we're having the same types of conversations still.
Right. I mean, collectively, Black people don't own anything, pretty much.
Yeah.
They don't control any resources, so it's really hard to. And I think about this often, and I kind of, not necessarily butt heads, but I'm moving away from more of the let's protest, because it's we've been protesting for a long time.
But you see that's the thing. See, protesting, right? Like protesting, the action of actually going outside. And I worked for a labor union, and I was doing some protesting, it's great to go outside and scream, right? There's something physical that's awesome. Stand online, feeling solidarity, and protesting. But what's the end result, right? Look at Occupy Wall Street, right? There's no ask, right? If you don't ask for anything, it can't be delivered on. It can't be negotiated.
Right.
There's nothing to barter, right? Exactly, right? You have to have a tip of a sword to cut through. You can't just be this broad thing. So protesting is good for one thing for me: visibility. Now you're letting other people know who are just like you. They're people who feel like you. Mm-hmm. But that's it. It's not a closing.
It's like another phase to it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that to me is another form of protest. Would be, like I said, financial boycott. Mm-hmm. African Americans and I think Hispanics as well too. I think account for more like 60% of all the entertainment consumed in the United States. Something huge. In movies, I think it is. Something like that. I was reading the stat. Don't quote me on that, but there's some poll, but some outstanding number. Fashion and everything. You know what it is if you just say, we're not watching this stuff. We're boycotting. You tank them. And then you know what? And you have hedge funds who are investing in production companies who are betting on these movies having all-star weeks.
Right, having black and brown viewers.
Exactly. Exactly. Let's say you had like Jay-Z Tidal. People knocked him for this, for trying to be too big, as if he was just trying to be gobble up the world. But if you had all the top artists say, you know what, I'm not putting my stuff on Apple Music. I'm not putting it on Spotify. I'm not putting it here because of the way they treat these artists and their intellectual property, that they create, and they're content providers, right? You have people start to listen to you. Colin Kaepernick took a stand as one quarterback, and it's great. Other people started kneeling, but it would have been great if the Players Association walked down on his behalf too, or knelt on his behalf too, or did something, something more. He ended up giving $1 million away in a year. That's great. That's putting up. But there's always strength in numbers. Imagine, so Colin Kaepernick gave away $1 million. I think it was 100,000. Yeah, it was $1 million a year, right? In 1 year, to charities, right? Imagine you had 1 million people giving $10 a week, or $10 a month, or 10 million people giving $5 a month, right? To some type of pot that was doing this. Do you know how many people right across there would be pandering to try to fix everything, political, social, especially, and financial, to get the attention of these people? And that's the thing. It's like it's the solidarity aspect after the fact. The protest is cool, right? But there has to be an ask after, and we have to be together, on that. And that's how you force reparations. That's how you
Great.
step on their necks.
Great. So one thing I'll start thinking about. So there are two things I want to bring up. So,
Sure.
Okay, that's a very good point. I guess financial empowerment. But now I'm thinking to myself, like what are some types of tools? What are some types of platforms that can help facilitate this? I do know. I actually got to meet the founder of WeBuyBlack.com.
Oh, wow.
Like he went to Howard.
Yeah.
I had no idea he was going to start that stuff. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
He was like planning on it. And I was like, I had no idea what this guy was talking about.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And now I see it's like a big thing now.
Yeah.
But it could be much bigger. But and there was another. So yes, this is what I want to talk about: media
Yeah.
and subliminal messaging and how that helps to keep racism intact. And I feel like
Yeah.
people don't really think about this, and every time I bring it up, people kind of look at me like, okay, like I really don't understand. Maybe I'm not doing a good enough job of articulating
I understand
my thoughts.
exactly what you're saying.
But I'm saying like, well, like if you think about how much goes into keeping implicit bias intact against certain groups of people, like media has plays a huge role in it. And I'm like, well, and it's all very subversive and it's all very suggestive. It's not at all forceful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then that's like one-sided, right? There's definitely forceful material and physical forces that keep racism intact. But these more soft, influential, suggestive forces are just as powerful, might be even more powerful nowadays.
That's where the fight is. The fight is in words, in terminology specifically, because it's a whole tree that falls down. The most senior political consultants get paid for just that, to control the language. When they say like an urban initiative, you already know what they're feeling, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to like
in the way that they've,
no one wants it. How do they establish it? Because they're when you have power, right? You want to maintain it, and you're able to look past like a 3-month basis. Like when you're poor, like you're going day to day. You're thinking about buying food for today and this and that. When you're rich, you can buy food for the month, right? You can plan vacation 6 months out. When you're wealthy, you can think about 7 years down from now, what's going to happen. So when you're in power, right, and you're thinking about 15 years out, right? If you go back to the 90s, right, when pro-life, pro-choice became the big black political election, they already knew what that meant. They already knew, like that's pro-life is all these Christians that they can manipulate, so to speak, in a certain way. They know that things. They know these hot button like terms like that they took liberal and progressive words and used them against them. So you have like the affirmative action, obviously urban areas. What's another one? Like brown people, it's they've made a definition. People in power made a definition for themselves and a distinction for others, right? And it's endless and it's very soft, as you said. It doesn't seem offensive, so you can say it in public, but there's sort of a way to decode it. It's sort of like a rap verse, like their version of it, like you don't know what he's talking about, but oh, did you hear that? Like that was so subtle. Yeah, it's just like that.
And
it's how you teach people generationally, right? So you have two people come up thinking about this, well, why are we always contributing to urban areas? Right? Because it's so much easier than saying, like, why are we giving black people money? Right?
Very true.
Why are we giving black people opportunities that they don't deserve to have? They don't work. This and that. If you swap urban for black, it's like you'd be outraged, right? But it's a way to control the landscape generationally. It's just to use language, and we need to smart people, they can see it and call it out. But it's the way that the most disappointing thing is that's the way they felt for a long time, and will continue to think. And they've just found a way to maintain it because the status quo doesn't appreciate that anymore.
Definitely. So I think the next step in, I guess, breaking this down would be to, I guess, brainstorm some ways in which marginalized groups of people can also use subliminal messaging, suggestion, influence.
We do.
Of course we do. But on a broader scale, like, it's just like, does it require, for us to do it on the same scale, I guess, to brainwash ourselves? I mean, because pretty much we're like being brainwashed. So it's like, could we brainwash ourselves to think positively about ourselves and to empower ourselves on a larger scale?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Without, I mean, because we do it on social media, but these platforms are not owned by us. So, and a lot of times they are policed. Certain messages, certain posts on social media platforms are taken down, and because they go against community guidelines.
I mean, think even before then, like BT. I remember how many my white friends would be like, well, how come you guys have a whole channel for you? I'm like, every other channel on TV is for you. Exactly. And they're not exactly teaching like the gems of our culture on BET. like it's not to BET, but I mean, it's like, it was entertainment purposes only. I mean, if you think about that, think about how many positive, I mean, you're right, how many positive, like, role models do we have, like, consistently as black figures? More now, a lot more now. I'm 38. Like, when I was a kid, like, Cosby's, Jefferson's, Fresh Prince, but like, if you look at the professions of these guys, like a lot, not the Cosby's obviously, but or the Fresh Prince, but like you've got janitors or the male guys. Then you look, all you are is like either like a worker, bus driver, a superstar basketball player, a musician, or maybe an actor, who gets killed first, but in the movie. But there weren't a lot of positive outlooks. Like there wasn't a lot of, and that's crazy in the 80s. There weren't that many like Cory Bookers, or there wasn't a Puffy, or there wasn't even someone like Kanye who could have it all and seemingly throw it away or afford to throw it away. Things are progressively getting better. I think like the change in demographics have changed that naturally, but still I think you asked a very, very like a sharp question, and that's like, how do we feel better about ourselves, right? It's hard to come from generations of this type of conditioning and like feel better about yourself, right? I think that to that end, there's also something good to be said about feeling inadequate, right? It pushes it. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is your ambition, right, or your defeat, right? But like if you use it as a drive, it's a good tool. It's a good tool.
Definitely.
But I think that's the motivation black community needs.
And that's kind of cool though, to come from a culture of just constantly like flipping stuff, like flipping misfortune.
Yeah, I mean it's every movie. Think about every movie, overcoming adversity. Doesn't matter what.
But that's what it's really like to be black in a lot of cases, and especially if you've accomplished anything substantial in this society.
Yeah.
It's like everything is stacked against you.
Yeah. If you look at everything's stacked against you, and everything is as systemic as it ever was. Like 2000.
On every level.
Yeah, like 2004, the subprime mortgage, like the mortgage crisis. Those loans were given to black people like with bad credit or decent credit or even good credit specifically, like all of them. Like it's crazy. My uncle got one. know, like this like crazy balloon mortgage. Like that's still an example of like institutions that are supposed to be here to serve us and advance us, like still picking off of bottom feeders, you know, and they're bottom feeders and they're just picking off the bottom, like they're attacking us, they're abusing the little equity that we ever do get and taking it back systematically, you know, and like, you know, there's a lot of misfortune, a lot of people's like spreadsheets, like somewhere, like people's houses, while you have homeless people, and then they point to African Americans and minorities as a whole as to drugs and gang violence and all this other stuff they equate with, but you know, it's not the actual story. You know, if you watch the 10 o'clock news tonight or any night, the first 15 minutes is black people and the things that we do, the negative things we do. There's nothing positive. It's not the firefighter who risks his life, or you know, or it's not the teacher who's, you know, who's spending her wallet for her students.
Right.
You know, or
I mean, just you bringing up the fact that the news stations have a very biased portrayal of certain groups of people. That's why I feel like social media, although can be policed, are very powerful tools of distribution, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, things can be taken down off of Facebook and other places, but at the same time, you know, at least these stories can get out, these perspectives, these realities, like recorded realities.
Yeah, you know, you can change influences you can influence someone on social media, but to me, the post itself is like the exit poll. It's like, this is like, it's kind of like no one's looking, I can post this, like, the fact that people post stuff shows you what's like deep inside them, and it can change someone's perception. But it's, I don't know. You could see what's going on just by watching the feed. Like, you don't have to be influenced by the feed. Like, you know, it's crazy what's going on in there. Social media is like, people. It's easier to doubt something than it is to believe in something, right? So like, look at it like, for not trying to understand or say or pretend to understand Trump supporters, but it's easy for them to say, no, we don't believe this. We don't believe that Obama's done anything good. We don't believe that this is that. We don't believe and being cynical is what's in right now. So like, social media to me is more like, it's a reflection of our cynicism than like a place for us to like become cynical.